Hello, everybody. Welcome to session D6, also known as Noel Elvir's Digital Tools to Scaffold and Support Language Learners. I'm Lee Colbert, and let me tell you, you are in for a real treat. Just a couple of housekeeping items. You can chat to communicate with one another. If this is your first time here, please click into the chat area and create a channel, and then you'll be able to chat. This session will be recorded and it will be available on the conference platform for 30 days and of course also on our YouTube channel for the life of the channel. Don't forget to like this video and please subscribe to our channel. We'd love to see what things you're learning from this and what is speaking to you. So please use hashtag PBCTechConf on Twitter and be sure to tag EdTechPBC. And Noel, you're on.
Hello, everyone. So as Lee said, I am Noel Elvir, and I am an ESOL Instructional Coordinator with the Department of Multicultural Education here in the Palm Beach County School District. I support schools in the South region, and I'm going to be talking with you today about some digital tools that will help you scaffold and support your language learners. The great thing about all of these tools is that they're really appropriate for all learners. So when we talk about meeting the needs of our English language learners, we always focus around their modes of communication. That's reading, writing, speaking, and listening. And we are part of the WIDA consortium, and they've recently updated their standards. We used to refer to these modes of communication as our productive and receptive. We've kind of shifted to expressive and interpretive. And so I'll talk a lot about how the strategies you're going to see really incorporate into all of those modes of communication. So the 5 that you see here is where I'll be embedding the scaffolds and little tips and tricks throughout the session. I have a lot to cover, so pardon me if I'm talking super fast, but I'm going to try to get through it all. So here again, you see this graphic of our expressive and interpretive language. So when we're talking expressive, we're talking that oral language, that written form of language, anything that the students are producing. And then that interpretive language is that receptive, what you're listening to, what you're reading, everything that the student is taking in. And they've recently incorporated representing and viewing. So let's get started. So we do a lot of work in our department around the go-to strategies. It's not developed by us, it's developed by universities and school districts, but the tools in this handbook are really appropriate for all students K to 12 in a variety of content areas. So those starred, that bulleted list by star is, that's kind of what I'm going to go over today. And what I'm going to talk about is how some of these things can be done in NEARPOD. So the exciting thing this year is any teacher in our district who has an English language learner attached to them has access to the premium NEARPOD account. So if you weren't aware of that, it's exciting news. Anyone can have a free account with NEARPOD, but the premium account does have a larger storage capability and some more features that the free account doesn't have. So I will highlight some of the fun things that you can do in NEARPOD. So first we'll talk about chunking text. So when we're chunking text, we're going to contextualize language. We're really going to help students make more sense of the text that they are exposed to. And in doing this, in contextualizing language, we want to add visuals and graphics and all kinds of illustrations to really help paint that picture and lower that linguistic load on our students. And this is going to cover the reading and listening modes of communication. So let's take a look at this piece of text. You see that red box around there. What has been done here is that piece of text has been brought into like a Google slide or another document and really just kind of chunking that piece of text and talking a lot around that, highlighting some key words, really elaborating on the meaning of those words, incorporating some visuals so that you can chunk that and scaffold and help the student make sense of that little small piece in a sizable chunk. So you see how taking that out can really help them build onto that text. So short digestible bites. We talk about this a lot with Marzano. Short digestible bites that a student can take on and make sense of that content. So here's another example. Here, the article is really talking about random acts of kindness. And so that kind of is hard to understand for a language learner in some ways. So that graphic there kind of represents what that random act of kindness looks like. It really helps them to have that diagram there. In the example on the right, this is an opportunity for students to respond. So here, there's two think alouds. Do you think this? Do you think that? There's an image there that helps the student understand and make sense of what's asked. Do you agree that athletes should be paid when they're in college? Or do you not agree that athletes should be paid? So that adding the teacher's thinking for the student kind of helps them make sense of what the question is asking. Couple more we'll look at, and I'm going to show, if you haven't worked with Google Slides or Google Docs, really easy ways to incorporate images and videos. In this example, talking about wildlife and some of the work that Steve Irwin has done. Who is Steve Irwin? Well, let's show a picture. Let's give a little background in a YouTube video. So that's embedded right on the slide. And then the slide that's on the right has a GIF, potato. That ripple, that word ripple, we're talking about a ripple effect of a random act of kindness. And so what does that exactly mean? Well, when you can see that the water is rippling, that effect that happens when you drop the drop of water or a rock, that ripple, having that image there actually moving really helps to paint that visual for the student. So these are just some ways to build background, scaffold the lesson, really help make the content understandable. So how do you put those visuals? It's really pretty simple in Google Slides or Google Docs. You just go to your Insert tab, click Video, click Image, and you can search the web, you can search YouTube. What I included down here are some links to places where you can find free images, so you're not going to get in trouble. I really happen to love Pixabay. I use that quite a bit. So those are some resources there. And there is a handout that you can access where you got into this session. And I think Diana, my moderator, is posting that also in the chat. So she will be able to show you, give you that handout also. And this particular slide is there with the hyperlink. So that will be helpful if you need to get to any of that. So here is NEARPOD. So NEARPOD is amazing in that there are so many things that you can embed right into your lesson. So this is an example of that same exact YouTube that I could have put in my Google slide. I now have embedded into NEARPOD, and students can watch it right in the lesson. And I can even chunk that apart. It's kind of like Edpuzzle, if you're familiar with that. I can chunk it apart, pause the video, pose a question to the students, have them respond, pick up the video, add another question in. So there's really a lot of amazing features, again, to help chunk apart the information that the students are taking in. The next example is Sways and 360 Cities, which really is a virtual reality field trip. So building background with these, you know, our language learners come with a lot of limited experiences. And so having this ability to kind of paint a picture of what it is that you're going to be talking about, this virtual field trip allows to do that. So here, let's say we're talking about Washington, D.C., and Safety Patrol is getting ready to go on a trip. And we're going to go to the Lincoln Memorial. So let's take a look at what that looks like before we even get there. Well, I can put a virtual field trip right into my NEARPOD, and students can literally flip that video 360 degrees and see everything that's in that monument or memorial. The Microsoft Sway is another feature you can add. Great way to build background. Also here, I put the White House. So the Sway is like a interactive newsletter. It's just another way to do maybe like a PowerPoint. The students scroll the page up. There are images to click on. You can pose questions to students, but it's just another way to provide more information in a user-friendly format. So we'll go on to number 2, building vocabulary. In our go-to strategies, I pulled out 2 strategies. Those are closed sorts and open sorts. So the difference between the two is I give students a set of words to sort, and I tell them I want you to sort fruits and vegetables, and they sort them. An open sort is different in that I give them a bunch of words or pictures, and they are asked to sort them. They may sort them by color. They may sort them by fruits and vegetables. It's up to the students. And what's great about an open sort is it really is a higher cognitive demand, and asking a student what was the thought process that went into your reason for sorting in a certain way. And this is really touching on those modes of communication for reading and writing. So Jamboard, if you haven't tried Jamboard, it is a virtual whiteboard and really just endless options of ways that you can use it. But what I'm going to show is how to do some word sorts using Jamboard. And again, this particular slide is in your handout, and there are some sample Jamboards that were created by our department, as well as a video to share with you some ways that you can use Jamboard with language learners. This first example here is a word sort, a matching with pictures and words. And what's great about that is when I have a newly arrived student who has limited English, the pictures really allow them to be part of the activity because it's less complex linguistic requirement. I have pictures of Bindi Irwin and I have her name, and I can recognize her name and her face and put them together. Whereas this second one, I have given students directions, match the yellow with the blue. They're all words and phrases. It requires a little bit more of a linguistic demand for the student. So a higher level English speaker would be able to do an activity like this. I could provide this before we start a lesson, a unit. I can provide it during, I can provide it after. It can be some mini type of assessment for the student. But Jamboard really provides endless opportunities for you to utilize the platform to do activities that connect to your content, vocabulary. Students can work collaboratively on Jamboard, so there's really endless options for it. So just seeing those two, if you've ever used Jamboard, or even if you haven't used Jamboard, be thinking and share in the chat what are some ways that you've used or that you might try using Jamboard with your students. And I'm going to share a few other ways to build vocabulary. So we've probably all done some pre-reading work before we start reading a piece of text. Well, this is an example of using a Google Doc. Students could work collaboratively on a Google Doc, or you can just use a regular Word doc and print it out and do hard copy. Here, I'm pulling out some key vocabulary for a piece of text or a unit or a topic we're going to be studying. And then students are going to be writing their definitions or a translation of the word in their home language, something that's going to help make that word stick in their mind. And then this example, again, we've got a chunk of text that's pulled from the reading, and then a little bit of elaboration on some of those things that might be a little bit demanding for a student, like immense financial strain. What exactly does that mean when an accountant sees an immense financial strain? So I'm going to give a little bit of a definition. I'm going to use the word in a sentence. I'm going to explain what that means so it helps really paint a picture in my mind. And those annotations really help to build meaning for the students. And you're probably noticing that there are tons of things I've already talked about that really apply to all students, whether they're struggling readers, whether they're students with disabilities, or our language learners. So how exactly can I put some gamified activities into my lessons? Well, you can build some vocabulary with games that are available in Lumio, which used to be um, Smart Learning Suite. Now it's Lumio by Smart, but right from your Google app selector, or the waffle, I guess, you can select the app and scroll down and you can find Lumio there. Or from your Google Drive, you just click New where the plus sign is, click More, so it drops down to more of those options that are available, and you'll find Lumio by Smart there. So those things like the word sort or a matching, you can put those right into lessons for students with their game-based activities. The menu on the right are some of those interactive tools that are available. And we'll talk a little bit about the sort. It's the memory match. We're going to talk about the fill in the blank. And but this is a way for you to access them and try using them with your students. So an example of a sort through the Lumio games is the one that's on the left. So here, this one was a pre-made one. 2 topics, nouns and verbs. Students drag and drop into the proper category. The one on the right is a matching. So matching the animal with the sound that the animal makes. This could be, it could be opposites, it could be words and definitions. There really are a lot of opportunities, but you're probably thinking these are more for primary level students. And that's why there's NEARPOD. So NEARPOD has an option called matching pairs. And just in case I forget to say it, there is a link at the end of this presentation, and it's accessible on your handout, that I've created this entire presentation in a self-paced lesson in NEARPOD. So you can access that lesson and you can go at your own pace, just like a student would, and you'll be able to see what some of these activities look like that I'm talking about, and we're not in them live. So that was a matching that we can do right in NEARPOD. Super easy to make. Number 3 is supporting native language. So one of the things that is really important to familiarize our language learners with is cognates. Many people don't even know what cognates are. So cognates are words that look and sound similar in English as they do in the Romance languages, Spanish, French, Portuguese, Italian. They are words that sound almost the same. And so what does that mean? Students are going to most likely know what they mean. So this is super important when we're doing listening type activities, and of course when we're doing reading activities. The examples that I put here were problem and problema. So problema is problem in Spanish. Evaporación is evaporation in Spanish. So if I know the sound and the look of that word in my native language, then I'm most likely going to pick it up when I hear it or when I read it in English. And so that's super helpful in the classroom, because if we can teach our students to become familiar with those words that sound and look the same in their native language, that's going to really help them start to make sense of the content that they're learning. So I'll introduce you to a tool called Cognate Writer. It's cognates.org is how you get to it. And when you get there, you can take a piece of text that you have in PDF form, copy and paste the text into the Cognate Writer. So what does that do? Well, take a look at the image you see on the right, and that's a sample Google slide. So in that orange rectangle, the left side has the actual text that the students have, okay? You see the green highlight is a key word in the text that the students are reading. The box on the right side of that is what I've copied and pasted into the cognate writer. All of those blue words, they're all cognates. So I guess if I look at those words and I can make sense of those words, I'm probably going to get the gist of what this article is about. If you notice, utilized, it's a boldface word. It's important. It's a key word based on the text that we're looking at. It's also a cognate. So I might not have to spend as much time talking about that because my students are probably familiar with it. What I need to make sure they understand are the words that are not blue that might really distract their I don't even know the word I'm trying to say, the meaning from the text that they're reading. So Cognate Writer is amazing. Brain Pop. So we recently added Brain Pop Junior and Brain Pop ELL. And if you choose Mobi and you drop down, there's Brain Pop Espanol and Brain Pop Francais. These are all accessible in our district portal. And then a couple more tools I'll share with you is some Google Chrome extensions. And on your handout, this slide is there, and the icons for Google Translate, I Am Translator, and TransOver will take you right to the Google Chrome extension, and you can add it to your Google Chrome. They're really helpful for teachers that need to quickly translate something that they're maybe doing for a student or a parent, and helpful for students to become familiar with too. And then lastly on this are our bilingual content glossaries from NYU. You will have a link to these too. Variety of content areas and levels to meet the needs of your students. And it's really important they become familiar with them and instructions so they know how to use them on their assessments. Also in the district portal is Gale Research. So excited to show you some of the features in the articles that you or your students can access here. First and foremost, the translation feature. So the top option will translate like the menu items, and then the one in the blue circle will translate the actual article. All Google Translate, tons of resources, tons of languages available. This is the elementary version, so it's a little bit more user friendly. The audio feature is great also. It is a computer generated voice, but it will also read the translated article. And then you can change first you can share to Google Classroom, and you can also change the levels. So not every article has an adjustment for the level, but most do. And then for your visually impaired students, you can increase or decrease the font size. And all of those features are also available in secondary. You notice that they look a little bit more mature, but you can adjust the Lexile, you can do the audio, text size, the translation, all of those are still there. So supporting student responses, we're going to talk about key sentence frames and word banks to support students' written and oral responses in class. So sentence frames are really important, and even so for our native English speakers, because how many times do you get a question and you're like, gosh, I don't even know where to start my answer? So really providing a frame or a starter so that you can generate your thoughts and get something written or spoken. So here you see an example of a piece of the text, and then the students need to think, what does that quote from the text tell us about the character? Well, then I give you a frame to help form your writing. The same thing on the right side. I give a quote with a visual. What does it exactly mean? Explain it in your words. And then I give students some frames to get their writing started. Here you have two visuals asking students, tell me how your life would be different if you lived in a different area where the climate was cold. The beauty of this is I create the words that I want to see in my students' writing. So I put those words there and I tell them they have to use 5 or they have to use 10. And that gets them more familiar with the vocabulary and using it in context. The example on the right is a summary frame. I give a word bank. I have the meat of the summary from an article right there. They're plugging in the important content words. And so that helps scaffold for our students who are more newly arrived. They're looking for the words that they need to plug in. Here is a fill in the blank that can be created in NEARPOD. It's super easy to do. Copy and paste the text, and I click on the words that I want to take out. Students just drag and drop them right in. Very user friendly. And then I can do the same thing in the Lumio activities. Again, copy and paste, click the words that I want to take out. Students just drag and drop. The one on the right is a Jamboard that I created. I gave a visual, I gave a word bank, I gave some sentence frames, and then the students make the sticky notes in Jamboard with the words from the word bank, and they're filling in the blanks to kind of help describe the picture that they're seeing. So endless opportunities for Jamboard. And FLIPGRID is amazing. Our language learners are sometimes really afraid to talk. Get them with a set of headphones and have them talking to themselves really gives them that experience with speaking and practicing their oral language. And you can get kids to comment back and forth on each other's. It's a great way to summarize something that students have read, get to know one another, and it really lowers the affective filter. So students are okay with talking, maybe not in a group of people. And our last strategy, I'm trying to go super fast because I know we're getting short on time. Modeling academic language and choral reading. So we'll talk a little bit about these. So choral reading, many of us do in the classroom, is when students have a piece of text and I have a piece of text. And in this example, I have a PowerPoint or I have Google Slides and I'm showing it in front of the class and I'm actually highlighting as I read and students are reading along with me. Then I have some questions that will allow students to reflect on what it is that we've read. So this particular example here, the highlighting there is basically where I'm doing the talking and the students are, I'm doing the reading and the students are able to hear me and read along with me. Well, there's an example of how you can do this in NEARPOD. So I took this simple article and then I put a chunk of the article into NEARPOD. And in NEARPOD, you can record the audio on every slide. So what I did here was I gave, and you'll see this in the self-paced lesson if you go in to check it out. I took this snippet of text and then I recorded myself. So my students can hear a fluent reader, how it sounds when they read this piece of the text. Then I give them an activity to get them thinking about what they just heard. And so here I have a real image of a seahorse. I ask them to share a fact or emotion or a thought that came to their mind when they heard what they just heard. And I give some sentence starters. Seahorses are, this made me feel, when I read this, I thought about. And the beauty of this activity, it's a draw it. Students can find an image that they want to put on this image. They can add a text box and write the sentence frame that I gave and finish it with their own thoughts. They can draw something, they can write it with the pen. So there's a lot of different ways that students can respond. And then nobody sees their response except the teacher. So the teacher is able to go in and view all the responses. If we're doing this in a whole class, then I might say, hey, I love this answer and show it to the whole class and nobody has to know whose answer it was. But it allows to spark some conversation. Pebble Go, if you're not familiar, this is really more appropriate for elementary, primary level students. But Pebble Go has a lot of resources that can be, that cover a lot of content areas, science and social studies. And this particular one is around cells. This has an audio feature as well, but it's actually a human reader. So this really ties in nice with the modeled fluent reading because it sounds not computer generated. And then for our newly arrived Spanish speakers, you can also see the text in Spanish. Also great for our dual language schools. So the entire text is in Spanish and the audio feature also in Spanish. And then in addition, there are some resources at the bottom of each text that you locate You can have a printable version of the article. There's some activities. Some have a few more activities than others. And then the video feature, which I like because this one about cells, it shows like an actual cell under a microscope. So it really gives students more of a visual of what they're reading about. And Storyline Online, I love. So I discovered this when we first went into the pandemic. A teacher at a school shared it with me, and I've been sharing it also. It's great because it's a way for students to see other leaders, actors, politicians, famous sports players reading stories fluently. And these are people that they can connect to, that they look up to. And so it's really nice for students to be able to see that. And this example, I'm not going to play it, but it's Angela Bassett reading Trombone Shorty. And so it's nice for students to be able to connect to somebody that they admire and they look up to. And then each story actually has a little bit of a curriculum piece that teachers can incorporate into their instruction also. So something to check out if you have not ever seen it. This is my resource wall with all of the things that I have talked about here. And so this is on the handout that you have. Each one of the little frames or images that you see will take you to the resource that I discussed. In particular, the NEARPOD one, I've said a couple times about the the self-paced lesson. So the self-paced lesson is right there on that NEARPOD link. It will take you right to the self-paced lesson. And what that will do is all of the features of NEARPOD that I was sharing, they will be able to, you'll be able to actually see how those tools and features work. What I will tell you is it's a lot to learn. I often learn by doing, and so I've really gotten familiar with how to embed these activities in NEARPOD. We use them in meetings, and it's great to be able to interact with others. If you ever want anyone to kind of do a walkthrough tutorial, I am more than happy to show you how to do that. So my information, I feel like I talked so fast, and now I feel like I'm ahead of time. But if there's been any questions from the chat that I might be able to answer, I can go ahead and do that. My contact information is at the bottom of the slide, and feel free to reach out to me. I know we have had sessions for NEARPOD. It's really been an amazing tool for our teachers to be able to use. The students love it, and it's great that our department's been able to provide it to teachers that have an ELL attached to them. So there's so many features that can be learned and used, and a library of resources within NEARPOD itself. So if you ever want to reach out and get additional support with using NEARPOD in your classroom, I'm happy to help you. My contact information is there, and I hope you've enjoyed this session. I don't know if there's any questions, but I feel like I tried to talk so fast because I was afraid I wouldn't get it all in. But I truly appreciate you attending the session, and I'm happy to interact with you via email if there's any resources or additional support that I can provide you. It's my pleasure to do that.
Thank you, Noel. That was really an inspiring session. I learned quite a few things, and I know I'll be taking some of those ideas next week with me when I go into the classroom to sub next week. So I want to remind everybody to join us at 2:45 for the closing session. And remember that everything is on our platform at technologyconference.palmbeachschools.org. And I know this is the part you've been waiting for, besides Noel's presentation. What I need everybody to do is type in the chat hashtag PBCTechConf. But I was also told to warn you not to spam the chat, that if you put the hashtag in more than once, it removes your name. So only do it one time and we'll collect it. And whoops, there we go. And just to give you a chance to put that in there, as you can see, somebody is going to be the lucky winner of a $25 Amazon gift card from Achieve 3000. We really do appreciate our sponsors. Thank you so much for supporting our conference. So we have 24 entries. Anybody else going to add? Tick tock, tick tock. All right, 27. Here we go. Let's see who our winner is. Boy, it slows down. It's painful. Wow! Yay, Maria. Congratulations, Maria. So just as a reminder that, Maria, please email John Shoemaker. That's john.shoemaker@palmbeachschools.org in order to get access to a form so that he can send you your prize. And we want to thank the educational technology team for putting on this conference and doing all the great work that they do. We really appreciate it. And Noel, thank you so much for a great presentation. Is there anything else you'd like to say?
No, other than the links that I provided in the handout, I hope that you find them helpful. My contact information is on there. It is always my pleasure to help others and teach new tricks. So feel free to reach out at any time. I am always happy to help.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And thank you, everybody. Have a great day.
Hi, my name is Martha Lamoureux. I teach 8th grade ESOL.
Wrong one.